Welcome back to another episode of Season 5 of the RAG podcast. As you guys know by now, this is the number one podcast across the recruitment sector globally. And we've always been on a mission to help recruitment agencies grow by interviewing founders and telling their stories of success from startup all the way to scale up and exit. Well, this season we're a little bit different. How do you, as a recruitment leader and founder, maintain your family and friendships whilst being the best person at work? How do you stay physically fit mentally and emotionally? And how do you find time for yourself in the madness? How do you find time for self-interest, for hobbies, and self-improvement? Well, to help you with this, I'm going to be interviewing someone every single week that can demonstrate experience in one or more of these areas. So I'm going to talk to recruitment founders and also some experts from outside the industry who can deep dive into things like relationships and health and well-being. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy today's show. Hello and good morning and welcome back to another episode of the RAG podcast. It is Tuesday. It is 10 a.m. on the 8th of February, 2022. The sun is not shining, but that is not going to get in our way today. I'm so excited. I'm always excited, you know that. But this week I am super excited. I'm joined by Tom Hibberd. Tom is the founding director of Precision Resource Group. Now, if you don't know, it's a parent company that sits across a few brands. Panoramic Associates, a brand I used to compete with back in the day. IO Associates, Panoramic Care, and a company called Finitas. So Tom's career started in 2001, I believe. So just over 20 years ago from S3, which a lot of recruitment founders, we all know, start their career in S3. And after 8 years, he started the business with a partner in 2009 to officially, initially it was just to build a really profitable and enjoyable recruitment company. And I know he spent the first 2 years enjoying that. And then he took the decision to grow it. So I'm super excited to find out about Tom's life, the growth of the business, because they've had some real significant growth and everything in between. So let's get into today's episode. Tom, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Thanks, Sean. Lovely to be here. It's not often I get to hear someone say that they're very excited to hear all about Tom Hibberd's life. So that's new.
Hey, of course, I'm not having that. I believe that everyone in your, at least in your business anyway, the whole of the team are going to 100%. They would say they're interested. Whether they mean it or not is a different question. We'll find that out. But Tom, thank you, mate. No, I'm genuinely excited. We've spoken a couple of times now. I've been looking, obviously, just started to partner with the business, which I'm super excited about. But could you just do me a favor? I've given a little intro there, but give us the overview of the business today. So how many people, locations, that kind of stuff? Because there is some significant scale you've built in this organization.
Yeah, and it's changing rapidly, even year on year. I've been reliably informed by our director of people that with the next intake this month, we're going to be up to 182 heads.
82 or 80?
182.
Wow.
Yeah, which I'm extremely proud of. We began the year at about 130. So given the pandemic or coming out of it, it's been a particularly strong year in that regard. And yeah, the business is going from strength to strength. Location predominantly Bristol, all headquartered out of one office. However, we've just had the E2 visa signed off for America. And so we're official. We've got 5 or 6 guys in the UK working American hours at the moment. A couple of guys in Tampa ready to go. The offices are ready to go. So we're hoping to be live there in 3 months or so.
Amazing. That's exciting. Will you get yourself out there and have a nice little trip to Tampa? That'll be a nightmare, won't it?
Do you need to ask that question? Yeah, no, I can't wait. We're actually taking 35 people, I think, out in a couple of months' time for an incentive that we ran just to show them the area, show them the offices, meet a couple of the guys that are working out there. So that'll be fun. I'll definitely get on that. And I'll hopefully get out there every couple of months or so. But we've got some cracking people, that are already working the market and doing very, very well. So we expect to see that particular torpedo in the water fly.
Well, it will. I mean, looking at a lot of the people I've interviewed and partners I've worked with and connections I have in the market, that US growth plan is real, right? There's lots of people doing it. It's not as easy as I think. It's not as easy as just landing in America and automatically you make double fees. I don't think it's quite that simple. But look, if you've managed to achieve what you've achieved in the UK, there's absolutely no reason why you wouldn't. So let's go backwards, Tom. I always like to start at the beginning, right? So you spent 8 years at S3. I want to just ask you a question. Why do you think S3 just produces so many great business leaders? Why is, I'd say it's like 30-40% of all the people I've interviewed have start their career at S3. What is it about that place that tends to produce such successful owners?
Yeah, and you'll never hear an ex-person, or I certainly haven't heard an ex-S3 person say that they don't love it. We all grew there, and we all took so much from it. Different things, obviously, but it was an impeccable training environment. The passion of the leaders, owner-led. When I joined, 2001, the company hadn't listed yet. It was still you're still very close to the leaders of the business, got to understand where it was going, the journey, the ambition. And you just felt like you were part of something massive. And then everybody, that does leaves for, a reason. And it's always a healthy reason. And mine in particular was just that I felt that I had done and achieved everything I possibly could there.
What was your role? What was your role at the end?
I was the business manager at the end, had a team of about 25, 30 people. The business, as I said, floated in 2005. Personally, I felt that in order to achieve my wealth and my business aspirations, I probably would just have to go and do something myself, or join a business that was, a lot smaller and in its infancy and had that opportunity for me. And so that's why I chose to move on. In addition to the fact that we were just coming out of a financial crisis, 2008, 2009, S3, quite rightly, we're consolidating offices down. My office in particular, was going to be brought into the Thames Valley progressive region. And there were a lot of redundancies at the time. And the guys were great to me. They offered some really exciting job opportunities all overseas that, ultimately tick a lot of boxes for me at the time. But I've been thinking about this for, 2 or 3 years previously, business plans in the back of books that I'd written coming back from holidays and stuff.
Yeah.
I just have felt like I had lots more to learn whilst I was there, because you could learn so much at S3. And that's why, going back to your original question, it produces such great business leaders, because you can just learn. And then, so I decided to, respectfully say thanks for the last 8 years, but I'd like to go and do something on my own now. And they were fully supportive of it. Yeah.
So what was the turn? When was that moment? Can you remember the moment you decided that's it? I'm definitely gone. Like, where were you? What was going on in your life?
I was on holiday. I was in Portugal in the Algarve.
Crazy how it's often that kind of situation, isn't it? It's often when we take ourselves out of something that we get that clarity. Go on, tell us a bit more.
You just reflect, don't you? You're on holiday. It's time to take yourself out of the business, out of the everyday rallying of people, trying to deliver on results, strategic thinking, and it just gives you an opportunity just to let loose and all of that and think, okay, fine, now where am I going? What is this? What realign with what you want to achieve in life. And I'd always had very ambitious plans, and just work out how you're going to get there. And then it was on holiday, you just get an opportunity to sit down and start jotting a few notes down, thinking creatively about what you would like the business to look like. And then eventually it was just a case of, right, this is going to happen over the course of the next year or so. And it just so happened that it aligned with, as I say, the financial crisis, which was a funny time to start business.
Yeah, that must have. Did you have some severe doubts about whether that was the right move to go alone in a world that you kind of didn't know the future?
Yeah, categorically. But the beauty of it is that I started the business with Mark. And I remember speaking to another colleague of mine who'd left S3 in the north and who chose to set up at the same time. And he was on his own. He'd been there 10 years or so. We were on the phone and he was like, I'm sat here. I've been doing this for 10 years. I don't know who to call. I don't know what to say. Where do I start? But the beauty of starting with a business partner is that you make your decisions. They're informed decisions. And then a month or 2 months down the line, you will categorically question those decisions, but you've got the beauty of speaking to one another and validating those decisions and continuing to push forward. And so whilst it did raise some questions, and that we did have, some very tricky months to begin with, we never doubted that we'd make a success of the business. Just how far we would take it is another question.
What was the relationship with Mark like prior? Was he just was he another business manager? How did that all come together?
Yeah, so Mark and I did the same job within S3, but Mark for Computer Futures, and myself for Progressive. And so we knew each other from trips away, manager trips away. We knew each other's figures, so we trusted each other, and we weren't friends. We didn't really know each other as friends at the time. It was actually quite a healthy thing to do, which is quite the opposite actually to when Neil got involved, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But it was a sensible play.
Opposite of me. Opposite, my business partner is my best friend, the guy who I did everything with. So yeah, I can see both sides. I can see the benefit of sometimes it's difficult when it's your close friend, but then there's other times where I feel like I trust him more than anyone. So who else would I want to go on this journey with? So it's like there's two, but I get it. So was he on the journey at the same that when you went to Portugal? Was he already as equally at the same point as you, or did it take you or one of you to kind of work on the other person to say, look, we should do this now?
It happened very quickly. No, not in Portugal. When the decision was made with regards to the Progressive Bristol office, and the decision was made that I wasn't going to continue with S3, I just bumped into Mark outside the offices when I went to collect some stuff. We just got chatting, and he said, I heard that you were thinking about, going it alone. Good luck to you. Have you considered a business partner? And at that stage, I hadn't at all, but I very quickly said, if you were considering it, I would definitely consider a business partner. And we got chatting that evening, and it happened almost instantaneously.
Wow.
But Mark had, as I did with S3, Mark had a great relationship with the Computer Futures guys, and he was very adamant that he was going to leave in the right way. So Mark stayed there for 6 weeks or so to do some gardening leave and hand over in the right way. Whilst I plugged in some data.
And what was your life like then? Like both you and Mark, where were you at in terms of your outside of work? Like where were you? How was your life set up? Were you living? Were you married? Were you in relationships? What was it like?
Yeah, it was a very interesting time for both of us. Mark got married. I got married whilst Mark was on his garden leave.
Right.
So by the time I got back from my honeymoon at the time, Mark had just started working in the office, and so I walked in from my honeymoon. He's there, and we're still suited and booted, right? Because that was what we felt like we needed to do. So I walked in, and Mark's there. I'm just married, and Mark was getting married the coming December, so 6 months later.
Right.
We're both really just starting that journey in our lives. No children at the time, and so
good time to go, I think. Good time to go before it gets really like ingrained in that family life. You've got you've probably got 1 foot out of the I want to go and drink every Thursday night mode, which a lot of us went through in our 20s. But then you're thinking about getting married, thinking about settling down. There's important things on the horizon, so get the first year or so out of the way before all of that happens. And the initial brand was Panoramic, right? What made you come up with that name?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. So we decided that we didn't want, and this was after lots and lots of conversation, and obviously we have restrictive covenants in play. And so we decided that to begin with, we didn't want to go at tech.
Right.
We wanted to try something different. And we decided we'd just go senior level hires. We wanted to make impactful placements. We wanted to build strong, long lasting relationships with clients. And we wanted if we were going to do a deal, we wanted it to be a big deal. Yeah. And so Panoramic Associates was born to supply senior level interims and to begin with into highly regulated markets. So public sector, finance, etc. Sat down, we spoke to a couple of marketing friends, sat down and talked about the panoramic view, albeit right at the very top of we're building out, building sites and things like, not building sites, buildings, city buildings, the idea was to place at the top, view from the top. It just felt, it felt appropriate, it felt right at the time.
Like it. And take us back to that first, because you mentioned in our pre-chat that your first 2 years were actually quite what's the word? Quite relaxed, quite lifestyle driven. Talk us through that early journey. What was it like when he comes back from, you come back from honeymoon, he comes back from garden leave. What was it really like starting off together?
Yeah, so I mean, there's two sides of that story. So obviously you've got the pressures of starting off, and we decided to start with no investment.
No,
that was a massive thing for us. Didn't want to take any investment. Wanted full creative license over the decisions we made in that business. Wanted to make sure that we could grow it financially, make sure that we're in a stable position, we're in a healthy position, so that when we started hiring people, we could do it with a client base, we could point to the story, and we could do it without looking over our shoulders, wondering how we're going to pay people. So yes, whilst it wasn't as pressurized as the forthcoming years would prove to be, there was still an element of, we've got to get the business through the door here. So, however, we'd spent the best part of 10 years for me, Mark a little over 10 years, he's a bit older than me, at S3. And, we kind of needed to, we're a little bit burnt out. We needed to fall in love with recruitment again. And so we chose to do it that way for the first couple of years, just him and I, building that client base, getting back to doing deals. We'd both been in, non-billing roles for 4 or 5 years.
I was going backwards, because I think that was honestly one of the things that put me off, that actually led me to launching a marketing agency. That I hadn't billed for like 2 years properly. Yeah. And I just don't know if that bit of the job was like, do I really want to go back to doing it? And I'm sure I loved it, but it definitely made me think, and that's where I kind of went into a different direction. But you go from a big team, 20 odd people, back to being on your own billing. Now, how did you get on with it?
Yeah, we were laughing. I mean, we laughed a lot. Some of the things that we'd come out with, and we'd look at each other, because we're just in a box room, the two of us, looking at each other, making calls. And, we'd really hold ourselves accountable to the quality. And sometimes if you came off and it was awful, it was, but that was the challenge. And that's okay, because we would win. We knew we would win eventually. And when we would win, we would reward ourselves, we'd do a couple of deals in a week, right up 25 grand's worth of business, 30 grand's worth of business, and we'd go and have a game of golf.
Yeah.
That was unheard of. For us to go and take a Friday out without putting our hand up and wondering who we should ask if we could do it, to go and do that. That was a lovely thing. That was a lovely part of my life. I enjoyed that, and I look back on it with very, very fond memories. And that was always going to be the plan. But eventually, we were going to get to that stage where it was like, right, okay, fine, we can do this, but we'll be doing it forever, or we can start seriously thinking about scaling this business.
So that was 2 years in, was it?
About 2.5 years in, yeah.
What sort of billings had you guys done at that point that had put you in a place of comfort to start hiring?
We got the business just between the two of us up to about 25 grand a week on contract.
Nice.
And it was only costing us 5 grand a month to run it. And so over that period of time, that had allowed us to really build up the reserves so that we could start investing. That was it. That 2 year period had allowed us to look back and say that decision of not taking on any investment was the right thing to do, because now it's all ours and we can grow aggressively. So that's what happened.
Talk us through that. How did that journey go? What was the first thing you did?
Yeah. So hiring people was fundamentally, because it was high value, the deal volume was was quite low. And so bringing graduates, because we weren't bringing in experienced people, bringing graduates into that type of environment, which pretty much a very low deal yielding environment, and trying to develop them was walking through treacle. It was that first couple of years after the initial 2 years. So 2 to 4, maybe 2 to 5 years was tough. You might have 10 people, 2 of them be out sick, 3 of them be out on client meetings, and all of a sudden, you've got 5 people sat in an office and it's deadly quiet again. And you're trying to coach them and develop them and teach them how to do this job. So that was quite tough, getting past that 10 heads. I remember, you get to a stage, you think these guys are really doing well, and then all of a sudden somebody's like, you know what, this is not for me. And you lose a couple of people. It's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But then we got that injection and things started to gather momentum. We got ourselves some new offices, and we moved into the new offices, and we had about 18, 19 people at the time. And that coincided perfectly with Stov coming back from Australia. Neil, I worked with when I first moved to Bristol in 2009. He went on to do a very big job for us 3. He was country director in Australia.
Right.
And we were great friends, right? So I was out on holiday and we were talking about the fact that he's going to want to get the kids home at some stage, to be close to their family and their friends in Bristol again. And I just said, whenever you do that, we desperately want to now launch the tech brand. Let's talk about doing it together. And that's what happened. And that's what allowed us to then, Stoff had huge ambitions. We had huge ambitions of growing the business. We wanted the S3 model, the group, if you like, which was then where we formed PRG, then with the competing brands within it. Not competing brands necessarily. Sorry, our brands don't compete. They just operate in different areas, but they cross out. And so that allowed us to then grow. Over the course of the next 5-6 years, you can see we've now got up to 182 people with four different brands.
I want to mention today's sponsor, Talent Ticker. Talent Ticker have said to me they're quite interested in Valentine's Day. They said, it's coming up. Valentine's Day is coming. Have you? First question to you: have you thought about it? Have you bought your significant other anything? But if you haven't, Talent Ticker are saying they're here to find you a special someone. Now, they're not about to launch a new app like Tinder for the recruitment industry, which might be an idea for someone listening to the show, but they are here to help you find the someone that's your next big client. So if you don't know, Talent Ticker is a predictive analytics platform that helps recruiters find out what's going on in the market at a deeper level than they could possibly do anywhere else. Now, to make you find more meaningful connections this year with the whole Valentine's Day theme, they are providing an exclusive list of the top 50 fastest growing startups that all recruiters should know. So this data that they've put together about these businesses effectively tells you that the companies on the list are all on the brink of a significant expansion and are perfectly primed to decide on a recruitment partner to help them grow. So it's free. Get hold of it, use it, go out there, meet these customers, find that significant other. You can find it at www.get.talentticker.ai/Hoxo. The link in the comments of the live, as well as on the podcast episode if you just click and read. So Neil came in to launch as IO Associates.
Neil came in as an equal partner on IO Associates. That was always the deal. His job was to run the business operationally, day-to-day sales and operations. We would provide facilities, financing, etc., and then be the leadership board with him. But then, as we knew, he did a phenomenal job. He was always going to. And then at one stage, it happened a lot more quickly than I expected. We decided to say, okay, fine, well, that's just bring your IO shares back into PRG and bring him up onto the board as a shareholder in PRG. So because he has such an impact on all of the brands now, not just IA.
Yeah, I imagine. So talk us through the change in you and Mark at the point of, say, from 10 to 18, and then again when Neil comes through. Like, how does your role evolve? Because I think if you look at most people listening to this show, they'll struggle to get through 10. And then they'll struggle again at, say, 20 to 30. So I want to talk about those two moments for you. How did you have to change as a practitioner, as an individual, to get the business from 10 to 18, 20?
You've now got 3 people, with a strong background in the recruitment sector that trust each other immensely and know each other's performances, know each other's strengths, and know each other's opportunities. And so it was all about that. It was all about understanding what roles we were now going to take on in the group in order to drive it forward. Mark is particularly strategic, extremely strong operationally. Anything that we've done, and any other business owner will tell you, that's done, where they've grown a business from 20 to 180 heads, there are so many different things that you'll go through from a systems perspective, different CRM systems, different finance systems, hiring CFO, hiring an FD. All of the tech stack that we've implemented, etc. That needs somebody that is particularly passionate about that stuff and very strong at doing it. And Mark's that guy. So Mark has overseen all of that, getting us into America, overseeing the visas, whilst actually overseeing the sales team as well within America. That was Mark's role. Yeah. Neil would run sales over IO, which is tech and engineering, and arguably, it's got the largest number of heads on that team now. Tech and engineering recruitment is very volume based. It was always going to be a big growth play for us. Neil would oversee sales in that area, and then I would oversee sales in our 3 other brands, Panoramic Associates, Finitas, and Panoramic Care, with the MDs or the directors underneath. And so it's just about making sure that we're all extremely aligned and accountable to what our areas of the business are. And that's still the same, even though the succession that is building now in each of the brands is fantastic. It allows us to now propel ourselves even further into a more of a strategic.
So when you got to the point where Neil joined, you split the roles up, very clear. What problems did you face though? Like you said at the beginning, it was 2 steps forward, 2-3 steps back, or whatever. What was the next wave of problems? Because it's not easy, is it? It's not like it's just you hire someone like Neil and then that's it. I'm sure Neil would say it was like that. But
categorically would say that.
Yeah, if he's not hovering in the background, then he's going to say it after. But in terms of that journey, talk us through some of the challenges you faced.
Yeah, I mean, so we grew IO very differently to the way in which we started Panoramic Associates. IO was all about investment in heads, tools, every resource that we needed. We decided to go as aggressively as we possibly could at getting it off the ground. And so that was a very different set of scenarios, not least from a P&L perspective. That business was loss-making, as we knew it would be, and expected it to be, for a good couple of years. And so our balance sheet took a hit. But again, that was the investment. And so that was a tricky time. That was a tricky time for Neil.
How does that feel? How does that actually feel? Because it's all well and good saying we know we're gonna have a dip to come through the other side. But when you're going through, you've been profit making, and suddenly the business starts to go like cash flow. Yeah. How does that feel?
Yeah, we were nervous. Again, we knew we would get there, but that period of investment, that period of growth was always going to be relatively painful. I remember specifically we had an accountant. We were working with an accountancy firm, and there was this one particular accountant at the time that just was looking at the books, and we gathered advice or ideas from anybody that knows our business, and we said, "What do you think about IO?" He went, "We need to do more sales." Well, that's not very helpful. We know that, but it was a 2-year period of us thinking this is going to have to take off because we have thrown the kitchen sink at this. And of course, eventually it did. Neil's very strong at building clients and then creating that job flow for people coming into the business. Trainees coming into the business being given 5 or 6 jobs to work on from a client is an absolute game changer, because all of a sudden they're learning how to do their job. They're getting wins away, and then they're not leaving the business. So the attrition rates were a lot stronger as well.
Yeah. What Neil, by the way, commented and said, Neil does say that. You can see the comment there that pops up on the screen. So Neil categorically said it was easy after he joined. Anyway, so the business took different shape. You've now got stronger leadership. You've got more investment going in. When was the point where you saw? Can you remember which year was it when you saw, right, all this investment now is starting? These people that we've, especially in the tech brand that we've invested in, are coming through, and it's what you're capable of now as a group is much bigger than what you were capable of before you invested. Can you remember what that was like and when that was?
A couple of years ago, it was not just the tech brand. I always say to people now, you can point to tens of examples in each brand of people that are absolutely killing it. And it's such a great environment to show people that if you commit to this role, you contribute, you're collaborative, you're fun with it, you're positive, you're passionate about it, you can and you will succeed. So every single brand, Panoramic Care, for instance, the reason we did that, well, that's because Dave Geeney, one of our managers at the time, is extremely entrepreneurial and came to us with an idea. He said, I want to do something similar to what Panoramic Associates does, but not in the public sector. And the story will dovetail beautifully. And he presented it to us. And we're like, do you know what? We buy into that. Absolutely buy into that. That's Panoramic Care. And if you can see that team now, there's some phenomenal performers. And when you tell the story to people looking in, about the relationship between Panoramic Care, Panoramic Associates, etc. It's very fluent. It is with all of the brands, and I'm keen to talk about that in a moment. But then within our Panoramic Associates business, that's obviously our oldest brand. Our top biller will do about 1.5 million this year.
Wow.
And that is, that's top 0.1% UK recruitment, right?
100%, yeah.
It's phenomenal. But then there's a team of people within that brand that are all doing it. Then the engineering play. Now we're doing, we've got some cracking clients in the UK, and we've got some fantastic people that are servicing those clients really well. And the IT play within IO as well. Overseas, Europe, and in the UK, I think there's 10 people that you could point to on any brand and say that's how to do it. And so now we can see that as a result of that, it flows down. The headcounts are growing. The yields are improving. The yields are big. That's the biggest thing, isn't it? Right? You look at your business, and we know what a good business looks like. Everybody's striving for those 10k yields per head, and we're nudging up. We're nudging up there now. Whereas in those years of investment, it was really difficult to do so. And Simon, our FD, very, very switched on guy, would constantly have anxiety about that. And we would constantly say to him, trust in this, it's pull through. It's a period of investment. The yields are low at the moment. It will come through.
How long do you give people when if they're new to the job, graduate recruitment, which is what you guys, I know the model is built on.
Yeah.
How have you got kind of a metric in play where you're like, we'll give someone X amount of months and then it's, we have to make a decision, or how do you look at?
I've got, in the main, this is the ethos of the business. If somebody turns up with what we call the care factor, day in, day out, if they really want to do it, they're really passionate about learning, they'll implement their actions, and ultimately they care about succeeding, and that all comes through in their attitude and the way in which they engage in the business, how positive they are, then we know it'll work. And so, if they need more investment, they'll get more investment. There are hundreds of examples of people in this, not hundreds, tens of examples of people in this business that haven't done a deal for their first 6 months or so, but it's going to happen because all of that stuff is being displayed. It's only when somebody doesn't display that stuff, when we're very passionate about that, it's not going to happen. And we have an honest conversation and we agree between the two of us that it probably won't happen unless something changes. And so it's not necessarily about a timescale that we would give somebody. It's about what they demonstrate along the journey.
Activity, effort, enthusiasm, right? I get it. So how has your life evolved at the same time as the business grown? And are you, again, what's your day like now? Like I know you've got a small child. I know you're going through a house development. There's a lot going on in your personal life. But tell us, how's your role? What's your role like now
in the business?
Yeah, well, your role in the business, but how does it dovetail with your life? Because it's not going to be the same as when you started, when you were recently married. Paint the picture of what a day and a week looks like for you right now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's totally different, right? I think arguably, going from that period of 2 to 6 years into the business, I got the balance slightly wrong. I put my heart and soul and every minute of every day into PRG, and that came at a cost. We're all learning, right? Amongst other things, my first marriage didn't necessarily work out.
Right.
One of my best friends to date still, but didn't work out for a lot of reasons. And I don't mind saying, we're all human.
I've been there.
It happens, right? And that's okay. That's okay for that to happen, as long as things are done in the right way. And I think I look back at that and I think now my balance is pretty much spot on. So I don't, I'm committed. I'm equally as committed to this business as I always have been. But I think that I've alluded to the succession. We've got directors and senior managers in our business right now that, are just absolutely flying. They do such a great job. It allows you to go and look more strategically at what needs to be done. But then also it allows you to make some decisions about your personal life that are really important. So my new partner, for instance, we've been together for a couple of years. I'm absolutely intent on not making those same mistakes. So if I'm going to Barcelona with a company for a week, we're doing our AGM out there. I'll come on, talk about that in a moment. But it's like, come along, work from Barcelona. Let's enjoy this journey together. The little one, Isabella, I will leave work at 3:00 on a Monday to do school run. It gives me a great opportunity to force myself to say, I'm not going to work, and I'm not going to go back to work after I've picked you up from school. We're going to go back, we're going to do your homework, and then we're going to do whatever it is we want to do. Yeah. On a Tuesday, I'll leave at 5, and I'll pick her up and we'll go and do singing lessons. Every week we do singing lessons. She absolutely loves it, and it's my opportunity to drive there half an hour, talk to her about it, sit in the singing lesson, come back, talk about it.
Is your daughter from the first relationship or the current relationship?
First relationship, yeah, absolutely. She's 10 years old, yes, and she's 10 now.
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, even this morning, right, we're getting up for school run, and you have to be rigid, in your timetable. In the hours of 6 till 8. If you're not, then the whole day can go to pot.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, she's poorly this morning, and says, "Okay, fine. Wow, I've got to get to the office. I'm doing this podcasting."
So how did you manage that?
I luckily enough got a really supportive partner, and great friends with my ex, and so we just work it all out together. And it's, as I say, the balance couldn't be any better.
Wow, that's it's one of those things, isn't it? Like we all come to work and we all do our best, but there's the shit that goes on behind that you not everyone knows and not everyone appreciates. How would you say you approach that with the people in your business? And I think the pandemic's probably evolved our mindsets some. I listened to a podcast in Australia with Pete Watson today, and they talked about the 4-day week. 2 brands rolling out the 4-day week, and they talked about how the pandemic probably changed the way they trusted their people to the point where they now have actually given them a day a week where it's not necessarily off, but they kind of they choose what they do that day if they want to work or not based on their diaries. So how have you guys approached that? A balance of knowing everyone else's. You've been through some shit yourself. You know what life's like. How do you approach it?
It's almost thank God for COVID, right? There is not one part of me that would have thought that we could get to this stage if we hadn't have been forced into it. Obviously, I said that lightly, not thank God for COVID, but if we hadn't have had the pandemic, there's no way in the world that we would have been forced into a scenario that would have made us realize that we can do this differently. And it's fantastic. We've got this performance-based, flexible model that we've implemented now. As a result of it, we have people that work from home full-time. We've got people that don't live anywhere near Bristol that we've now employed throughout the pandemic. Live in London. We don't have an office in London, but they work our markets, and we trust them implicitly to be able to do it from home. We've got people that do 2 or 3 days from the office or 2 or 3 days from home, but it's all about performance. If you can't perform in that model, then you need to come in and have the resources that are available to you. You need to be able to have the support of a manager, the support of your peers and your colleagues, guiding you through certain scenarios, the support of our L&D team. You can train from home, you can do it, but but if somebody's really struggling from an environmental perspective and they need that support, there's no substitute for the office.
No. So would you take a graduate who wants to work remotely then? Would you do that? Or do they all
so the graduates at this stage, no, that's not possible. Because and again, this is where I think Boris got it right. The furlough scheme was just we used it so well, and it was so appropriate that we had 35 people, I think maybe even 40 people that were how should we class trainees at the time, March 2 years ago, and those guys, it became apparent very quickly we're just going to sink. They weren't going to be, they didn't know how to do this job. They didn't know how to develop a client, and they certainly couldn't do it on their own from home. And so the only fair thing to do would be to use the furlough scheme so that we didn't have to part company with them. We didn't want to do that we judged those guys to be good enough to be part of our business. And so we wanted to see that through. And so we used furlough for those guys, and then we brought them all back into the business as soon as we were able to be here. And there's some fantastic examples of people that have now, really that are flying as a result of that.
I bet the loyalty with you guys will be so high because of that as well. But they'll be,
oh God, yeah. And also, for the sake of our sleep at night, we it's not just about getting loyalty from people, but we want to be able to sleep at night knowing that we've done the right thing by people. That is so important. But yeah, so a graduate, no, at the moment, until they got to the stage where they were skilled enough to do it. And so we have a ratchet. If you're a consultant, you can have 2 days a week working from home. And so when they get to consultant stage, they're skilled enough. They know how to do it. They can have.
How long is that in your business from starting to get to consultant? How long does that typically take?
It's not a time scale. It's based on a certain level of performance, number of deals that they have done, so that demonstrates to us and to them that they know what they're doing and that they're capable of doing it.
So what would an average person take? Six
placements. Yeah.
Oh, 6 placements. So what?
Yeah.
Could be 6 months, could be 12 months, depending on.
It depends on. It could be 3 months. Yeah.
Okay. And then when the 2 days a week from home, and then if they get, then there's some instances where you've got people who, like you say, they don't even live in Bristol. Are they coming in with experience at the point you've hired them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's 4 or 5 examples. People living in London or Birmingham. We've got one of our consultants actually that was hired before. She's now moving up to Scotland. There's all sorts going on. But I can't stress enough. It's all about the people. Everything we do comes back to our people. Everything that we do. But it's not possible for somebody to work from home and not perform and that be a sustainable scenario. And so that's why we just say you have the flexibility, but it's based on performance.
One thing we've been speaking about recently on the show is this whole work from home topic, and I've had some pretty opinionated people say, like, I genuinely don't believe people can make as much money if they're at home, and others think they're idiots and that they're living in the dark ages. It sounds like you're a little bit in the middle there. So it's like you feel like the early days is really important, and then it's just performance related, depending on how you want to do it after that point. I guess my question is, how have you been in a scenario where there's someone who's shown enough to get to the point where they can do a couple of days from home, but then not shown enough that they can keep it going, and you've had to call that back? And how did they respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just a conversation, isn't it? I've had one very recently with somebody that I've got a very great, very strong relationship with. That is a senior consultant that flew in the office, is doing okay from home, but they would do a lot better if they had more support around them, and have that conversation. And we've agreed that they're going to come in a little bit more often. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You can mold it for each scenario, each person. So yeah, it's a conversation with somebody, and if they choose then not to come into the office and they still can't perform, then again, that's the same as anything. It's just not a sustainable scenario.
No, I agree.
And it's only going to win one way, really.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think for sure. I think it's such a difficult one because if you flex too much for certain people, it can create some inconsistencies that cause bigger problems. But if you treat everyone like a number and a robot and do the same thing, then it equally, in a world that we're in now where everything's merging, I don't think that'll work. What's been your worst moment as a business owner? What would you say has been the worst moment? If you could go back to the shittest day or shittest time you can remember.
As a business owner, the worst moment. Wow. Yeah. Probably being making the fast track 100 and coming 89th. we genuinely were walking around the golf course, waiting for the call from our head of marketing, expecting to get top 10. We'd built that in our heads. Yeah. We're brilliant. We're going to be top 10. This is fantastic. It's our first year of entry. And she calls me, and Michelle said, "Yeah, no, it's great. We made it. We're 89." And I'm not sure that's the worst day.
That's a pretty. I can see that we've
been out of sales a little bit.
Still a positive, but have you ever had moments where you question whether or not you're doing the right thing, or you?
No. Never had a moment where I've questioned I'm doing the right thing. But there will be dark days. We know that you'll lose clients. It happens. You'll lose great people. you need to limit it as best you possibly can, but it's going to happen. You'll lose great people, and you will be saddened by that. There are examples where some of your best people will lose contract runners, or their best deals will drop out, and you'll see the colour drain from their cheeks. And because you're in it with them, you're in the trenches of these guys still. And I believe that we want to be 500 people in the next 7 years. And we've got a lot of work to do. So we're going to need to be in the trenches with them for a long time yet. And so you build strong relationships with people, and you want them to win. And when you see them lose, that it's draining. It is. And then you've got to be there with them and their directors or their managers to pick them back up. And so I wouldn't say there's one huge event that was the worst day of my life, but there are lots of events in business that challenge us. It's the industry, isn't it?
100%. What do you think stops a lot of businesses getting to the scale you've got to? Why do a lot of recruitment companies not break past that 30-40 mark?
Okay. Well, again, it's hard to answer for other recruitment firms. I think what will have stopped us getting past that stage, if anything was to have done, would have been the development of leaders. The development of leadership is so important. We're investing heavily, and we may talk again, and you may ask me, well, what would have stopped you getting from 180 to 300 people? And it will be the same answer. Think now about what we're doing with some of the guys. Constant career planning, constant game planning, constant opportunity planning, development. An example, we've just brought in a learning psychologist to work with, or performance psychologist, sorry, to work with 25 of the leaders in the business. Wow. And that's we're putting ourselves through it as well. I haven't had any official training since I left S3. Yeah. And so it's about giving, and it's not from the recruitment industry. We're very adamant that we want to do something different. We don't want to teach people stuff that we.
How far are you into the sessions with this person?
We're only a couple of sessions in each, and we've got them for a year.
Wow.
And so it gets you thinking. It really does. And it's all about understanding. It's not about changing you as a leader. It's about understanding who you are. There's 4 different types, or 5, 6 different types, actually. It's about embracing that strength, and look at all the strengths of being that type of leader, but then also recognizing the other sides, the other areas, and just opening your mind to being a little bit more like that in certain scenarios. Yeah. And when you read your profile, it's so every single person on the course so far said, wow, that's accurate. And it's a real eye opener, and it gives you a lot to work on.
Does that stuff stretch into the personal side, as in your life outside of work, or is it just looking at leadership in work?
Well, I mean, no, it certainly does. I've let my partner read mine, and that was a conscious decision. Brave decision, but
she's still there. So,
yeah, exactly. And I've had some feedback, but I welcome that. That's sort of part. I want to be better in everything that I've done. I mean, I think I mentioned to you a while ago, 2015, I think it was. There was a certain period of growing the business where I felt a blockage. I felt like my performance was being limited by the way in which my mind was working. I'm quite an obsessive person. I do have quite a lot of OCD. And I was speaking to a very successful colleague of mine, friend of mine, actually, who had been on a number of CBT therapy sessions. And he just talked to me about it. And I researched it, identified somebody, started speaking to them. And I spent about 18 months talking to this person. And I just felt like it freed my mind from a business perspective. It allowed me to take the shackles off, but also from a personal perspective as well. It stopped me checking a lot of doors.
Well, think about it. Like you said it before, right? You're very open that one marriage didn't work. You're now I'm in a very similar situation. I'm in a new relationship. I'm out of a marriage. I wouldn't say that my business necessarily was one of the reasons. I don't think, but there's lots of factors I contributed to the demise of that relationship. And I have a performance psychologist I'm speaking to tonight. I can't wait. Like it's every 2 weeks now. It's gone from once a week, which I'm trialing bi-weekly this year. and I'm itching. This guy called Ari who was on my podcast not long ago, and we talk about work and personal life. It's very fluid, but I think you can't have one without the other. If you think about your team now, all these leaders, if they've got problems and pressures outside of work that they can't deal with, they're not going to be the best versions of themselves in the job. So it's that. I don't think there's so many recruitment companies that they see a line. I mean, business in general, they see a line between the personal and the professional. And it's like, leave your shit at home, bring your A game. And it's just, I don't think it's
realistic.
True. Yeah, it's bollocks. It's just not the way people live anymore. Like Zoom has I've got 2 dogs behind me while I'm recording this show, right? You when we spoke the other day, you had builders in the background. Like, we learn about each other on a level that we never did before.
Yeah.
And I think it's about embracing it rather than fighting it.
Totally.
That's my opinion. Before we got about 10 minutes, tell us about the growth plans that you've got, because you just subtly dropped really casually. I was going to 500 people. I'm like, whoa, okay. Tell us more about what's this vision you've got and why.
Yeah, it's what gets us out of bed in the morning.
Okay.
We made a decision 3 years ago that the decision was we needed to roll out the plan for everybody, and we needed to make sure that anybody, regardless of how much time they'd spent with us, 10 years or a day, knew what we as business were trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And we just didn't think we had that, and so we brought it to life for people, and it's part of the mission, the vision, whatever you want to call it. It's the 10-year plan. And we're 3 years into that now, and I'm pleased to say we're tracking above it. And so it's becoming very, very real for people. But we want to get to 500 heads. And that isn't just an arbitrary number. We've modeled it out. There are certain things that as a leadership team we want to achieve. There's a big wealth play there. We'll want to take on investment. We're talking to lots of people at the moment about what that may look like. We want to create wealth opportunities for the leaders of this business, not just the founders, the leaders, people that come on the journey and help us achieve what we want to do. And so that number of 500 over the course of the next 7 years is very real, and it means a lot to us. That then obviously translates out into GP, EBIT, etc., and yields, etc., which we don't need to share. But that's the vision for the business. And we see ourselves over the course of the next year. We're 182 people now. We see ourselves over the course, our financial year ends in April. By next April, we'll see ourselves at 300 heads, 250 in the UK and 50 in the US.
So then you've got 6 years to grow 200. That sounds really, if you're going from 130 or whatever last year and you'll be at 300, do you think the scale will have to slow down because the amount of people that can leave and will be hired, and when to go from 3 to 6, is it because it's you've gone from 150 to 300 in 2 years and then 6 more years to double it? What do you reckon? Is there a reason?
Are you saying do we think we could achieve the 10-year goal in 8?
It just sounds like you've kind of rapidly going to get in the time to get to halfway there, or 60% of the way there. Then you got this big period to get the rest. Yeah. Whether or not you'll achieve it early, or do you foresee actually the real challenge is going to be 300-400? Because
I think in answer to the question, I think we can get to our 10-year goal in 8. This last year, has been epic. The revenue has grown 50%. And we rolled out the budget. We have a very intensive budget season coming up. We do it for 3 months in Q4 every year. And we involve the business leaders in each brand. And we talk through what we need to achieve. Every figure under the sun: contract GP, perm starters for the year, total NFI, whatever you want to call it, yields, what that needs to look like, headcount, average deal values, average weekly GPs, all of that stuff. And we live and breathe it. We live and breathe it throughout the course of the year. The budget is reviewed continuously. The board meetings, we go through it meticulously. Last year, we said to the guys, if we achieve a certain level of GP this year, which would have represented over a 50% growth, we will take this AGM overseas. That's what we'll do as a reward for all of your hard work and all of your commitment, and for just working with all of the values that we hold dearly to our hearts. That's what we'll do. And there was a lot of skepticism in the room. They were looking at us as if we were bonkers. It was like, wow, is this just like a play to try and get us as motivated as possible? And look, I'm delighted to say we're going to surpass that. We're going to significantly surpass it. We'll surpass it with a month to go. And so we're taking 182 people to Barcelona on the 5th of May for the AGM, which I'm very proud to talk about.
182 wow.
I know, yeah. We can't all go from the same airport.
No.
So yeah, a few people getting shipped to.
You won't all get in one hotel either, will you? You have to book a fair.
We managed to get everyone in the same hotel.
Really?
Yeah. The travel company sorted that out. Yeah, and then a few people will be staying on afterwards. But that's exciting. So can we do that? Absolutely, 100%. The EBIT is flying at the moment. We're achieving. Well, again, we've surpassed the EBIT by a significant amount. I think it's probably inappropriate.
What's driving you though, Tom? Like, I look at it and I think. It all sounds amazing, right? It's brilliant. But I imagine the EBIT right now means you probably could live the life you want. You could probably do whatever you want. I'm sure you're not financially struggling. I'm sure you could live a great life and treat your daughter and all the rest of it. Why? What's driving you? Where's this coming from? What does it? Why does it matter?
Look, there are a number of reasons for that. To be brutally honest, there have been some exits that have happened this year. From businesses that I know and know well, and they have been extremely impressive. Not just from a wealth creation perspective, but looking back, leaving a legacy, a sense of achievement, a sense of pride. All of that stuff drives me, and we aren't there yet by any stretch of the imagination. And this is a job half done. There is so much for this business to achieve, and I am so excited by it. Getting up and talking in front of people. The business about where we're going, what we want to achieve, and then actually doing it and being able to look people in the eye and say, told you that we could do that, and we did it together. For me, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. Also, I'm only 45, right? What would I do? Without this business? What would I do? I play golf, and I'd probably go to the pub.
That is dangerous, isn't it? The thought of it, retiring early, you got all that money in. You would probably end up drinking or eating lunches every day, and you'd end up like a big fat mess. So and I've interviewed a few people who've said it's their darkest year, the year after selling. It's like, but is that the vision saying 7 years, early 50s? Do you then see perhaps you would step away and exit? Chairman?
And remember, it's all about looking the guys in the eye that we've promised this to and saying, we told you that there would be another round. We told you that it would be a significant wealth vehicle for you to play a part in, take it to the next level. It's being able to sleep at night knowing that I don't have to be involved in this business anymore if I don't want to be. I don't have to go and do anything else if I don't want to be. Financially, I've achieved my objectives. Personally, I've achieved them. My aspirations, they've all been met. So I don't have to. I can now pass the baton on to other people to help them achieve theirs. That's genuine. That's like if I
in like a chairman type role where you'd still be involved on the board and
potentially, yeah, absolutely.
I don't think you strike me as you love it. You absolutely love it. Like your face when you talk about it. I can't see you walking away and chilling playing golf. I think you'll be.
Don't tell them that because they won't believe it.
No, but even if you're like once a month involved, going out, helping out with things. I just think you'll be on that annual trip to Barcelona. You'll be there. I guarantee it.
I did say I was chatting to Mark and Neil the other day. I said, when we do get to this event, let's say it's 5 years' time, can we still go on the club lunches?
Yeah.
I do. I love it. I couldn't love it anymore. I'm so passionate about it.
I love it. What would you say I think you mentioned public. Did you mention you've done a public speaking course? Am I making that up?
No, again, it's investment in people in the business, and we did one. We'll be doing them again and again. The guy that did it for us, he just done a TED talk. He was he's a good guy, knew his stuff, and we put about 30 people on his public speaking course to help them, lead the business, to help them at AGMs, to help them at monthly kickoffs, to help them with their clients. We do a lot of meetups. Create a lot of communities, within the areas that we specialize within. It's so important that people can deliver upon those confidently. And so it was a big investment for us. But the funniest part, I think, for me was that the guy was like, the whole theory behind it was map task, make a point, tell a story, with your vignette. And he said, within your vignette, it's widely accepted that 20% of it can be embellished, which was a bit of a curveball for me, because I've been working on 60% for the last 25 years. So
no, I'm speaking at the Recruitment Agency Expo tomorrow. Maybe I should. I haven't done it. I haven't done it for 2 years. I mean, I present on Zoom about 50 times a week to like hundreds of people. So I don't really. It's not something that worries me. Whether I'm any good at it, you can decide if you come and watch. But it's not something that ever worries me. But I know for some people, it's a bit of a fear. So great. I think it's really admirable that you've took that time to invest in yourself. And I think that's what I've picked up from this whole conversation, is that you're really passionate about the people. You've invested in the people. You're spending money on things. You've got a vision that it's all about the people. It's everything about your brand has become about the people, which I'm sure that they'd be very proud to be part of. I've had one question from a guy called Thomas Woodhams, who says, "What's the hardest challenge you face in the recruitment industry?" Which is quite vague. I'm going to leave it as what do you reckon? What's the hardest thing what's the hardest thing you face leading a business in the recruitment industry? Last question.
Yeah. In the UK, it's just a fierce competition. You're trying to get, you can't get enough experienced people. So you've got one choice. You've got to bring in graduates, and you've got to train them well. And then you've got to get those people to a skill level where they can take business from a client that's got a 10-year relationship with another supplier and convince them that they're the way to go. That is just not easy. It's the toughest thing to do. And so the development of those types of people in volume is for me the biggest challenge. And that's one of the things that will stop you from being able to get from 40 to 180 people, not being able to develop enough of those people. In order to develop those people, you've got to develop great managers and great leaders to develop those people.
And I think that the more I interview the people that are in bigger roles, bigger businesses like yourself, it's a very similar story. Like the investment in others and the focus on others becomes paramount to that success. Tom, time's up. We've just done over an hour. I can't believe it. It's gone so quick, mate. Thank you so much for giving us the time.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm
going to have you back on, and I want to see how you're tracking again. I'm going to hold you to that. I think you're going to achieve the 500 way in advance of the 6 years. But let's check in say 12 months' time and see where you are on that. If anyone's watching the show, wanted to pick your brains on either leading a business or wants to, think about even joining the business and is compelled by the story, is dropping you a message on LinkedIn okay? Is that a way to get hold of you?
I'd love that. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. Be more than happy for that to happen.
Wicked. You'll be tagged in everything that we have. I'm gonna leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure today, and I'll be back again next week with another guest. I've got some wicked guests lined up. I'll be at the Recruitment Agency Expo tomorrow. I'm speaking at 2 p.m. in I think it's Theatre 2. So hopefully some of you can hear my dogs going crazy now. They're ready to get out of it. So I've got to go. But I'll see you all again next week. Thank you, as always, for listening to today's show. I truly, truly hope that you got value from it. That's the only reason I take time every week, is to ensure that my audience, future and existing recruitment owners, are learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. Today's episode was brought to you by Hoxo Media. I am the CEO and founder of Hoxo Media, and we are the world's leading content marketing and personal branding agency for recruitment businesses specifically. So we are working with over 200 agencies and 2,000 recruiters right now, both managing the brands, producing content, building written, video, podcast content for niche recruitment agencies all over the world, as well as coaching at a desk level individual recruiters in your businesses how to be better on LinkedIn. That's how to brand themselves. That's how to produce content. That's how to use the opportunity on LinkedIn to get traffic to their profiles and turn that into business. We're coaching people all over the world every single day. If any of that sounds of interest, please do visit www.hoxomedia.com or drop me, Sean Anderson, a personal message on LinkedIn. I would love to talk to you. Tune in again next week. That's live on LinkedIn, or you can catch the show on the following Monday from 6 a.m. on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'll see you soon.